Hello everyone, welcome to Coder and Boots. So in this video, we are going to discuss about some basics of Linux. Okay, so Linux is a very powerful operating system and it is very widely used in the industry. And nowadays it is very popular because almost all the modern applications are getting deployed in Linux. So in my career, if I tell almost 90 plus percentage of application that I have developed in my entire career is deployed on Linux. Okay, and long back there were so many softwares that was specific to Windows or dependent on Windows, but now if you see almost all the open source softwares or all the platforms that process large data, for example data related platforms, AI related platforms, or AI related softwares, everything runs on Linux. Okay, so it is very important for every developer to learn the fundamentals of Linux so that they can excel in their career. So to quickly get into the Linux, so we need to have some basic understanding of, or we need to go through this process. Okay, so we need to have an understanding of the architecture, we need to have an understanding of the various distributions of operating system because there are several flavors available in the market. Then we need to have an understanding of the Linux file system. Okay, so because most of the users are either familiar with Windows or Mac. Okay, so they all are familiar with the GUI based operating system, but once it comes to Linux, majority of the users will be using the command line, the black screen. So it needs some familiarization of the file system, otherwise it will be difficult for you to operate. Then the last but not least, we need an understanding of the Linux commands. So you don't really need to, there are a lot of commands, hundreds of Linux commands, but you don't really need to remember all those, but at least you should have an understanding of some of those so that you will be able to search and use whatever is required based on your need. But so at least some basic commands you need. Okay, so let's understand the architecture of Linux. Okay, so people think Linux is complex, but to be frank, it is very simple. Because when I started my career, or when I started my career, to be frank, I didn't had any understanding of the Linux. What I have heard about something like RedHat or Ubuntu, those are just operating system, but I didn't had, or I never ever used Linux in my before my career journey. Okay, so but once I started using, so that time it was very difficult for me to start or learn this because because the place where I started my career, there was no internet connection available for me. I had to refer books. Okay, I have to refer several books to understand. So it was kind of a difficult thing, but once I started my learning, once I started understanding about the system, it became very interesting. And after some point, I love Linux now. Now if you see, like, I mean, almost everything that I develop, it's on Linux. Okay, so the architecture is very simple, irrespective of the distributions of Linux that we have. Architecture is very simple. At the center we have hardware, on top of that we have kernel. Okay, so then hardware is the hardware or the physical machine that you see. It's a computer, okay, with RAM, processor, everything. And the first software component, the operating system component, is the Linux kernel. Okay, so this is the central core of the operating system. Then on top of that we have a shell. Okay, so this is the we can say the interface for humans. Okay, for us to interact with the Linux system, we use shell. So people use like GUI as well as the terminal. So shell is like, I mean, we can say shell accepts shell commands. So using the shell, most of the, I mean, our commands will go through the shell. Okay, applications, some of the application uses shell, some of the application directly interact with the kernel. It depends on the type of application. So applications and utilities, it can either reside on top of shell, or it can directly interact with the kernel. Okay, but our interactions through command line, it all goes through shell. So there are various different type of shells available. So that shells, different type of shells. Okay, how to interact, the various commands, everything we will discuss in the later part of this video. Okay, so now let's understand the different distributions of Linux available in the market. So most of you might have heard about Ubuntu. Okay, Ubuntu is a very popular operating system and which is free. There is like free version of Ubuntu. So the operating system itself is free. It's available to download. There is desktop variant, there is server variant, there is variants for embedded devices, the small devices, Raspberry Pi. So it is available in different flavors and it is very widely used in the market. Then second is Red Hat Enterprise Operating System, Linux. So that is RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Okay, so this is a software or operating system which is widely used in enterprises. So Ubuntu is also used in enterprises, but Red Hat is also, like, I mean, when coming to enterprise, I see a lot of Red Hat because basically there is a professional support available from Red Hat. Even Ubuntu also, now there are professional support available. There are paid enterprise plans for Ubuntu. Yeah, so Red Hat, so the Ubuntu and Red Hat, there are some fundamental differences, but the commands, everything almost are so the file system commands, or if you see from an end user point of view for deploying applications and all, you won't really feel that much difference, but there are some fundamental differences between Ubuntu and Red Hat. Okay, one is from the Debian family, second Red Hat is basically in the Fedora family. CentOS, so I've been using CentOS for almost a decade, but before 2 years back, what has happened is CentOS became the upstream version of Red Hat. That means the unstable versions of the Red Hat stream. The CentOS became the upstream of Red Hat. That means it is no longer, like, I mean, the stable release of Red Hat. Previously, the Red Hat and the CentOS both were similar. So CentOS was the community enterprise operating system, which we can call it as like the free version of what we get in Red Hat. So whatever you tested in CentOS, it works exactly in Red Hat. That was the situation. But now we cannot use CentOS for production grade applications. Okay, so it became that way. But we have Oracle Linux, so it is also similar to Red Hat. So it's basically the same code, Red Hat and RHEL same code, but Oracle Linux is free to use. So you will get the same look and feel, everything as of RHEL from a command line point of view. If you look at the black screen, Oracle Linux and Red Hat Enterprise Linux both are the same. Fedora, again, it is an upstream version of Red Hat, so it's again open source. Kali Linux, it's a flavor of Linux which is widely used for by security experts, cyber security professionals, etc. So it has a lot of it is basically bundled with a lot of utilities which is related to the security, hacking. Okay, so for network scanning, okay, so for vulnerability assessment, everything. So SUSE Linux is another flavor. So in this list, if you group the operating system by family, we can see Ubuntu, you will see a Debian family. The commands of Ubuntu or Debian related operating systems are similar. RHEL, CentOS, Oracle Linux, Fedora, the commands are almost similar. Kali Linux and Ubuntu, so if Kali is built on Ubuntu Debian flavors, you will see similar commands. SUSE Linux, it has some differences, okay, so compared to Ubuntu and Red Hat, but fundamentally the file system architecture or the file system commands, most of them are similar. So the differences I am talking about once you get into the real Linux administrator. Okay, so if you are working as Linux admin, then you need to really care about the differences. But if you're an application developer who just develops applications and deploys it on these machines, it doesn't matter a lot to you because most of the things are same for you. Okay, so now let's understand the different type of shells, because when we discussed about the architecture, we have seen something called shell, which is the interface for the end user. Okay, so the black screen that you see on the Linux is basically the shell. Okay, so it's a terminal, and terminal has different shells. Okay, so there is Bourne shell, C shell, TC shell, and then Corn shell and born again shell. So born again shell, so these shells, the basic file system commands are similar, but there are some differences or there are some additional commands, there can be some utilities. So depending upon the type of shell, there can be some differences. Born again shell, bash is one of the widely used shell that you see across all Linux variants. So for general purpose usage, so bash is a very good shell. Okay, but you may see sh or even customized version of some of these shells. You will see it in the Linux variants that you have. So yeah, so but so let's understand, like, I mean, what this shell is, what are the shell commands, how to understand a shell once you get into Linux, etc. So what I have is okay, so maybe we will discuss about the shell part once we get into the practical session. So let me okay. So let me just explain the file system structure also, and then we will get into the practical part of it. So just remember, like, we have various variants of shells. Now coming to the file system. So file system, so this is one of the important thing that you have to understand in Linux system. So the difference between, so what I have seen is when software engineers start interacting with Linux, they will have some understanding of Windows system, because you have a nice GUI based system, and you know C drive is there, D drive is there, then you have desktop, right? So all these so for example, in my computer, so I have this is my computer, and C drive is there, D drive is there, and in C we have something like program files, right? And then these program files is basically the system files, wherever our application related installations, right? It all goes inside the program files. Then we have a users directory, and this Windows directory is where, I mean, the operating system components reside, right? And then we have users is where, I mean, we have all the user home directories present. So I am right now logged in as coder in boots user. So I have a desktop downloads. Okay, so if you see my downloads, so this directory is basically c:users/coder/downloads. Okay, so this downloads is specific to my user. Similarly, documents is specific to my logged in user. Similarly, desktop is specific to my logged in user. So it is all present in what? c:users. So this is the coder user, and this is where user specific thing goes. So as it is going through a GUI, it's very easy for every type of user, or for example, it doesn't need to be a person doesn't need to be a software engineer to interact with Windows. He can be see, accountants use it, like stores, grocery shop people use it. So almost everyone uses Windows because of its easiness to use, right? But in case of Linux, what happens is, it is only that we can call it as advanced users mostly uses it. The reason is so because, I mean, the interface is not that user friendly as what we see in Windows, right? So that's why even software engineers also, when they start using Linux, I see a lot of problems. Okay, they are facing a lot of problems. Let's understand some of those problems. So the main thing is, they don't have a clear idea about the file system and the permission, because in Linux everything is file. Okay, so whatever application you see, everything is available inside the system as a file, right? And there is a structure in which the files are arranged, or the folders and the directory structure is arranged. If you don't know the file system structure, and if you don't know the permissions associated with that, you will get into trouble, because you are in a black screen, and if you don't know where you are, you will, it's like, I mean, a blind man going without any understanding of where you are, right? So that's why you should have a proper understanding about the file system. So here, that's why, like, in Linux, everything starts with root directory. Okay, root directory, it's like a tree like file structure. So it's a we can say tree means, I mean, what, we have a trunk and several branches, right? So the trunk, we can say it is a root. Okay, the slash is, like, I mean, we can say that's the root of the file system, and on top of slash we have directories like /bin, /etc, /home, /opt, /tmp, /usr, /var. So there can be some other directories as well. All these directories are the root level directories that are created one level on top of the root. So on top of these first level directories, there can be another set of directories. Just like in a tree, we have branches again, sub branch, finally it will go till leaf, right? So same way in Linux, we have this tree structure in the file system. So we need to have a clear understanding of what this structure is and what is the permission associated with each of these structure. So let's understand what this structure is. So in bin, okay, so let's get into the system. So first thing is, so we need to have a basic understanding. So when we get into the system, what usually happens is, we will have to log into the machine. So there are two ways to log into the machine. One is if the machine is located somewhere in a remote place. So if you are trying to connect using the network, then you will use an SSH client. SSH means secure shell. So SSH client like PuTTY, or there are some other clients as well, but PuTTY is one of the popular SSH clients available in the industry. So you will be using putty, and in the putty we have to use the IP address or host name of the machine, and the SSH port, the default SSH port is 22, but this can be changed. So if it is a different port, you have to enter the port as well. Then you have to use a username password or username key passphrase. So depending upon the type of authentication available, you have to enter the credentials over there. Okay, so once you enter this, you will be, so in this case, in my case, it's a username password, so password based authentication. I'll have to use the password. Once I enter, I get into the machine. Okay, so what is this? I think I entered a wrong password. Now I am entering the right password. Yeah, because caps lock was on, that's the reason. Wrong password came. Now I entered the right password. So now you see I logged in. Okay, so once you log in, now you see there is a login banner available in my machine, but it doesn't need to be the case with everywhere. So in the login banner, you can see welcome to Ubuntu 24.04 LTS, right? And it shows several other information. But in case of depending upon the shell or depending upon the because this is a banner, this banner we can change it. Okay, override it with something else. So if you have if it is overridden and if the information is not there, then what will happen? You will not have any idea, like, I mean, what this machine is. So you need to have an understanding of what this machine is. First of all, there are some commands that will help us to get an understanding. Okay, so uname -a. Okay, this gives us like some idea. So uname -a, there is a command uname, and -a will list. So if you see help. Okay, so if you see -a means list all, print all information, right? S -s kernel -n node name, kernel release, kernel version, machine. So it lists a lot of things, and if you do just uname -a, it lists everything. It is a Linux. Okay, coder Ubuntu is the host name, right? Then it is a Ubuntu. Okay, then the time, so many information, so much of information, and it is showing x86_64. So this is basically like an Intel based 64-bit operating system, right? So 64-bit system. So that's what this is showing now. But in this, what happened? It is just showing Ubuntu, right? But it did not show what is the operating system version. So for that, there are different commands. So one is like, I mean, cat /etc/*release, right? So this gives us some information. If you see this info, it shows distribution release, distribution ID Ubuntu, distribution release 24.04, right? And again, distribution description Ubuntu 24.04 LTS. That means it gave us the complete information of this operating system. So in this way, we got some info. There is another command that helps us to understand this. This works in CentOS as well as CentOS, RHEL, Fedora, and Ubuntu. So it is lsb release -a. Okay, so this also gives us the information. It's giving distributor ID Ubuntu, description, release, code name, right? This data it gave. So using this command, we understood the name, okay, distribution, okay, the variant, everything, etc. of the Linux machine. Okay, so if you are logging into a command line, you will get to know this detail. Then you can see over here cib@coder Ubuntu. So usually this is the username, the logged in username, and this is the host name. But in some cases, some shells, this information doesn't show up. It will be just a dollar or just a hash or something on the shell. So in that case, you can understand who is the logged in user using who am I. Okay, this gives you the understanding of what is the name of the logged in user. And host name, you can get it by using the command host name. Okay, host name, host name. This will give you the host name of the machine, and the shell that you have logged in, that you can get it by doing echo $0. Okay, echo $0. This is giving bash. So my default shell, the currently logged in shell of this user is bash, but we can switch to other shells as well. For example, bash is what? Bash is born again shell, right? So we can switch to other shells available in the system, because the only thing is that shell need to be installed in the machine. So in my case, I mean, I have let's see how we can switch to born shell. Okay, this bash is born again shell. Simply sh will take you to born shell. Okay, now you see sh echo $0 it's showing the type of shell as sh. Okay, so this is Bourne shell, and as you can see now, you are in the shell, but in case of bash, it was giving user ID, username at the rate hostname. But in case of this shell, it is not giving that username at the rate hostname, right? So that means in this case, we are just directly on the shell, right? Exit will take you directly out from the second shell. Okay, so and by default, in my case, CIB user, when I log in, it directly lands to the bash shell because there is a configuration associated with it. We can change that configuration. Okay, so based on the requirement, we can change it. Similarly, con shell, KSH, right? So KSH, this might not be available by default in the machine. So you can use apt install KSH in case of Linux machine. Okay, so let's see sudo apt install KSH. So this will install con shell. Okay, so in my case, KSH is already installed, but if it is not installed, what will happen? KSH will get installed. Let's type KSH. Now echo $0. This gives us KSH. Okay, con shell. So I think now we interacted with, tried 3 different shells. Like this, we can have any type of shell, and you can even customize. The source code is available. You can customize this shell based on your requirement. You can create your own commands. Okay, and that's how you can customize the operating system. Now we discussed about the default shell, right? How to change the default shell of a user. So there is a file called /etc/password /etc/passwd. Okay, so this file, if you see, this has some data. This is the username. Okay, then there is some information. Okay, then there is what? The directory, username, the home directory, and the default shell. Okay, for example, let's see what is there for our coder user. No, CIB, right? There will be a CIB entry somewhere in this file. Let's see where it is. Yeah, here, CIB. Okay, this is the ID, user ID, group ID. The user ID is 1000, group ID is 1000. Then the username CIB. Okay, home directory is /home CIB. Default shell is bin bash. Right now, let's see. We have another user, coder user 02, right? Let's see. Let's modify this bin bash to /bin sh. Let's see whether we have /bin sh available. Okay, bin sh. Okay, we have bin sh available. Now what we'll do is sudo nano. Nano is a file editor. So nano, vi, there are several different vim. Those are file editors. So in this file, let's modify the coder user 02s to, instead of bin bash, to bin sh. Okay, now let's switch su hyphen coder user 02. Okay, sorry. So I don't know the yeah, let's log in using the password itself. I know the password. SU stands for switch user. Now I am into coder user 02, and you see there is a difference in the shell, right? There is no hostname, username and all. Now let's see who am I. Okay, I am coder user 02, and now let's see echo $0. Okay, it is Bourne shell, right? It's showing Bourne shell, right? It is not bash. So in this way we can modify the shell of a user. Okay, so I'll explain more about the shell scripting, shell commands, everything in a different video, but this is just giving an overview. Okay, so now we understood the different shells available, how to modify the shell associated with the user, etc. Okay, now let's discuss more about the file system. We were discussing about the tree structure, right? So here we have /bin. /bin is a directory. So usually let's do ls-al. ls is the command to list files and directories, and we discussed about the root file system. Root of the file system is /, right? Let's list everything under root. Now when I'm listing everything under root, it's giving me bin is there, and you see a green color in the bin. Okay, and it points to usr bin. That means there is no bin directory, and if you see here, it is a L means link. Okay, this is bin is pointing to usr bin. Okay, so because in some flavors of Linux we have bin directory, but in case of here in my current operating system, so what they have done is they have merged bin and usr bin. Okay, so bin is the place where the binaries, okay, the usr bin is the place where the binaries are present. So if you see here, whatever commands we are using, right? So under bin you can see like get text, get conf, right? So all the commands that we are using, the command means basically what, internally there will be a program corresponding to that, right? The binaries related to all those are present inside the bin directory, okay, or USR bin directory. So that means bin is a place where binaries are present. And if you place anything inside bin, so ideally it is not recommended to place directly inside USR bin. It's recommended to place inside if you have anything custom, okay, let's say you are bringing a software or a binary and you wanted to add it to the path, the recommended location is USR local bin. So if you keep it inside this location also, what will happen is it will be there in the path, and it will act as it will show the same behavior as like what is present in USR bin. So let's see what is there in USR local bin. So this is also a place for keeping binaries, and you can see there are two things, Chrome driver and GitLab runner. These are two things which I installed in this machine, which was not default or which was not available in the raw operating system. So Chrome driver, we don't really need to give the full path of USR local bin Chrome driver. So I am right now, if you see, pwd is the command for present working directory, for printing the present working directory, pwd. Okay, I am in home CIB. Basically I am as CIB, I logged in as CIB, I am in home CIB. But now from here, if I type Chrome driver by simply typing Chrome and typing tab, it is giving the full name Chrome driver -v. It's giving the Chrome driver version. So that means whatever I have, the binary I have inside USR local bin, it is directly accessible from anywhere in the machine. Okay, that means it is added to the path. Similarly, the same is the case with GitLab runner as well. So that means if you have a binary and which you want accessible from anywhere in the machine, you can keep it inside USR local bin. Okay, so bin is the place to store binaries. Then /etc. etc is the place where we keep we have the configurations. So people say like etc is everything configuration, etc everything configuration. So almost all the configuration files reside of the system services as well as your third-party applications go inside etc. So I'm just doing ls or within etc. So I have Nginx. Nginx is a popular web server. So I have Nginx installed in this machine. The configuration of Nginx is present in ls etc /etc Nginx. Okay, inside Nginx /etc Nginx you will see all the Nginx related configuration, right? Similarly, ls/etc, let's see GitLab runner. You see GitLab runner, it's showing permission denied because I am running this command as a non-root user. So there is specific permission inside /etc GitLab runner, but there is a GitLab runner folder over here. Okay, similarly you see there are a lot of other things inside etc. Apache 2 is there, this is Apache web server, app armor is there, right? So cron is there, almost all netplan is the network related things, network, right? All configuration files goes inside /etc. Okay, the purpose, so this is also, we can say it's a place which needs elevated privilege. So this is also, bin also needs super user privilege to make changes. Okay, so let me do ls-al/, here if you see the permission, so permission again to understand what the permission is, so you can see d rwx r something something r something something. Okay, the permissions are defined with 7 characters. Okay, 7, not 7, it's a 9 plus 1, 10 characters. Okay, so 10, the first one basically it shows like, I mean, the directory, file, okay, link, all those things, I mean, is defined in the first one. Then the remaining 9, okay, it is rwx, the 3 each for user, group and others. Okay, so the current user, so the permissions to the user is defined in the first 3, that means read, write, execute, and for the group it shows whether read, write, execute in the second 3, and others it's in the last 3. So in this case, the user, the owner of this particular folder is root. Okay, group is like, I mean, root. So the user has read, write, execute full privilege, group has read and execute, others has read and execute, right? For example, bin, so here in case of bin, everyone has read, write, execute, right? So everyone has read, write, execute. But in case of for example, we have sys. Okay, here if you see, nobody has write access, everyone has read and execute. Okay, now we have root. If you see, only the user has read, write, execute, others and group doesn't have any permission. right? So depending upon, and home, if you see, the home directory is owned by root, and group has read execute, others also has read execute, right? So depending upon the directory, the permission varies, and depending upon the permission, right now if you see, who am I am CIB, and that means I am CIB and I am not part of the root group. Okay, that means only the place, the last I belong to the last part, the others part. Okay, wherever I have read execute or read write execute, that is what I have over here. So and you see the current directory where I am in, that is pwd, right? Home CIB. Let's see what is there in home CIB. al/home. Okay, so inside home you can see there are several directories. That is basically the home directory of every user. So we see a directory called CIB, that is our directory, and here it's owned by CIB user, it's owned by CIB group, and here the CIB user has full permission, group has read execute, others doesn't have any permission. So this is a private directory which is specific for the CIB user. Same is the case with coder user 01, coder user 02, coder user, and the GitLab runner. Okay, that means every user's home directory, that user has read write access, but others doesn't have any access. That means if I try to get into cd/home/coder user 01, I'll get permission denied. You see, permission denied because I don't have access to get into this as a normal user. So the same is the case in Windows as well. If you are a normal user, if you try to get into somebody else's home directory, you will get an issue permission denied, right? So but if you are an admin user, you will be able to get into other users directory. So we discussed about etc. Now we discussed about home. Home means every user's default home directory is present in /home. Okay, in old flavors of Linux it was under /user USR, but now it is no longer /USR. So now means, I mean, from several years it is basically under home, the default location. And as we have seen in the past, cat is a command to print or read, okay, the contents of a file. So etc password PSSWD. So here if you see, by default the home directory is here, right? Every user home directory is /home/username, right? But this is again a configuration. So while creating user, we can configure the user home directory to be a different directory. So depending upon your requirement, you can change the home directory. Okay, and in this etc password, you can see some users where we don't have a shell, there is no login. That means this user doesn't have basically we cannot log in as this user. Okay, the only thing is we can use this as a service user for running some programs or applications. That's why you see several users, www data, I mean this is related to web servers. Okay, there are several users over here which doesn't have login access. That means we cannot log in, but we have users like this. Okay, that is mostly used as service accounts for some programs or processes, which is system internal. We can also create users like this, right? Okay, so and we can also configure in Linux. The beauty is like we can configure everything. That is the power of Linux. The reason is if you modify the Linux operating system to your own flavor, what will happen is the viruses that will not be able to apply a common pattern everywhere. That's the strong capability in Linux compared to other operating system, because recently what has happened is there was one issue with one software running on top of basically the CrowdStrike software running on top of Linux, and it impacted almost every laptops within the in the world, right? So but in case of Linux, if your operating system, if you have customized or if you have made some changes, the patterns won't reappear everywhere. Okay, so the chances of reappearing the same pattern is difficult. Okay, so we discussed about home directory. Now OPT, okay, /OPT. OPT is a place where you can keep your applications deployed. Okay, so your so because when you install some I mean the default services or system services within Linux, it goes either inside /USR, the data goes inside /var. But let's say if you are introducing something else, right, on top of means some third-party softwares or something, so that goes under /OPT. So running a program as a user account, okay, so running a program as a user account means like in your user home directory, that is not recommended. So you have to always run it from a common location, right? So slash opt is the best place which is created or defined specifically for that purpose. For example, if you see slash opt, I have installed Google Chrome in this machine, containerd and CNI. So these were installed additionally after the installation of OS. So you see those got installed in a in the location slash opt. Okay, so opt, the optional components or the additional applications, this, so we can install in this location. For example, you are downloading a Java, okay, Java binary, okay, Java can be downloaded as like RPM Debian files, so those gets installed into slash usr location. But let's say if you're downloading the just the generic binary file as is, you will get a zip file. So if you are setting the path manually and installing it in the system manually, so then the location where to keep that Java is slash opt. Similarly, Python, if you are installing Python, you can either do it using like the apt-get install Python, but if you're downloading the binary as a zip file or a tarball directly from the website and installing it manually, then slash opt is the place to install those. Okay, so then slash tmp is the place where it's a universal read write readable writable location. ls slash ls-al slash, see slash tmp, you see a green color over there, and the permission you see read write execute, read write execute, read write execute. That means everyone can write. So usually this is the temporary storage or the temp location. Okay, so in Windows also we have a temp location, right, where every application writes its application data. Similarly, in temp location, all various applications, okay, as well as our custom applications, everything can use this location for maybe creating some temp data, right? And so the only thing is some that gets cleared. Okay, so over a period of time some things that gets cleared. That it's not a place to store something permanent, so it's a place that gets cleared periodically. Okay, it's a temp location. Now the next important location is slash usr. So as I discussed some time back, this was long back, this was a user home directory, but now it is no longer home directory. Now this is the place where we have the application binary is kept, like usr bin, all the symbolic links, right, binaries, the custom binaries, all those goes inside the usr location. Okay, and again under usr it is not just bin, there is lib. This is the libraries. For example, the Python, right, Java installation, all those, the default installation goes inside slash usr, right? You can see Python 3 here, right? Java, let's see whether there is Java. Java is not there. I think I may have not installed Java. That's the reason. lib64, there is usr lib64. So depending upon what all things you install, it all goes inside the usr directory. Okay, usr lib is basically all the libraries and the packages will go inside the usr directory. Next is slash var. Var is like the meaning of var is variable data store, variables. So this is the place where the application data gets stored, okay, by default. So usually in production scenarios, what we do is, for example, let's say when we are installing MySQL, it's a popular database, right, or PostgreSQL. So when we are installing, by default the data store, okay, goes inside slash var directory. Okay, var lib, for example, let me see whether we have something over here. So var lib, I don't have MySQL in this machine, but okay, var lib nginx is there, right? Then let me install MySQL. If I install MySQL, I think MariaDB will come. So what will happen is the data directory will be created inside DB. I need to add the repository. That's the reason it is saying unable to locate MariaDB. Apt-get MariaDB is also not there. Postgres. Let's try Postgres. apt-get update. Sorry. Sudo. Let's clear all the cache, repo cache. Once we clear all the repo cache, then let's try installing again. Now let's try install MariaDB. Yeah, now you see PostgreSQL I am installing. So here let me see whether PostgreSQL, it's installing only, yeah, it's installing the server as well, right? So it's installing the server. It takes a while to finish the installation because it's downloading the packages from the internet. So takes few minutes to finish the installation. You see it is creating a lot of directories, extracting packages, it's installing several packages. So apt is basically the we can say the package manager in case of Ubuntu. So you can install applications, install libraries, everything using apt get or apt command in case of Ubuntu. In case of RedHat, it is yum install. Okay, CentOS also it is yum install. Oracle Linux also it is yum install. And in case of SUSE Linux, it is Zyper. Okay, so that is one of the differences between these distributions. So anything Debian, apt command will work. So all operating system under the Debian family, in case of Raspbian, in case of Ubuntu, in case of Debian, okay, so all these operating systems, apt-get or apt, both will work. So installation is almost complete. So now it installed, it's refreshing things. Now let's see /var_lib var_lib var_lib psql something. Yeah, you see var_lib PostgreSQL, you can see, right? PostgreSQL 16, right? So main, okay, so it has it's showing permission in it, but this is like I'm in the place where the Postgres is storing data. Okay, so var is basically the location where the application data gets stored. But usually what we do is, in case of production scenario, so this is like one of the partitions or locations within the OS itself. We keep a separate storage directory with enough storage capacity for this data store. The reason is, I mean, otherwise what will happen, we will have to keep the root volume to a large size, right? So we usually won't recommend that. We keep a separate I mean, we can adjust this with the help of configuration. We can configure this to a different path, right? So some of these, basically the application specific storage directories, we usually configure it to different directory. Similarly, for example, Docker. So by default, when we install Docker, data directory is within var location, var directory. So what will happen once we have more images or containers, the var directory will get the size of the directory will grow more. Okay, so to avoid that, what we do, we usually configure it to some other different location. So that's about var. I think, I mean, we have discussed about, and you will see it's not just this, you will see a lot of other directories within /boot. This is again some system directory where the boot related information is stored. /dev, this is the place where the device files. So for example, in case of Windows, we have device manager, right? So in device manager, so whenever we plug in any devices, all those information will be available, right? Similarly, under /dev, all the device related, it can be disk, it can be USB or a hard, I mean, any device, mouse, whatever device that you connect to the machine, you will have device related files inside /dev. Okay, then media. So let's say if you plug in a USB and that has some movies, so that you will see an entry in the DEV as well as you will see the data as an attached disk. Okay, so those things you will see it under media. Then MNT is a location where you can mount it, but you can even mount it to different location. Whatever you are attaching the file systems, you can mount it to the other locations as well. PROC, Proc is again a system directory. So under this proc, you will see the CPU info, mem info. There are other several system related files under this one. Okay, so some of the files under this dynamically gets updated when you boot the system or when some parameters change in the system, etc. So this is something that users won't directly interact with. This is something that is kept within the system. Root is the home directory. So in Linux, root is like, I mean, the super user by default in Linux operating system. As I said, root, file system root and the user root is different. File system root is /, that is like, I mean, the top level of the file system. Similarly, there is a user called root. That root is the default super user in case of a Linux operating system. So the root user home directory is different compared to other users. In case of other users, the home directory is /home under /username, right? So in case of normal users, the home directory is under /home /username. But in case of root, the user root, it is /root. Okay. So root user is meant for like this is a super user and this has full permission inside everything inside the Linux. So usually we have to be very careful with the root password, root login, etc. So that user's home directory is what we see it as /root. Then run is a directory again where our process IDs, sockets, all those things are there in the run directory. Okay. So I think we have covered the major file systems or the directories under this one. And in this, I would say, let's say normal user. So we should always work on the directory that is under our directory. Our directory is basically under /home /our user ID, right? So this is the place where we have full access. We can create directories, right? mkdir test01. Okay, so test01 already exists, test02, right? So go inside test02, 02, right? 1. Okay, you can create files, directories, whatever you want, you can do it within your home directory. And if you want to know where you are, always type pwd and ensure you are inside the right place. And if you are lost, you want to come back to the home directory, either you can simply type cd or you can type cd and there is a symbol tilde. If you type cd tilde, it will take you back to your home directory. Okay, and never use sudo command for executing or creating something within a place where you have full permission. Always use sudo only for super user activities, for example restarting some service, right, or making some modifications to some configurations within the outside your directory. Outside your directory means, for example, you want to make some configuration changes in /etc, or for example you wanted to add a new binary, or for example you want to copy something to /opt. So for those kind of scenarios you can use sudo, but anything within your directory you should never use sudo. The reason is, let's say sudo mkdir, and sudo will not always work if you don't have, if your user is not added to the sudoers. By default a user will not be added to sudoers. Okay, by default a user is just a normal user, but the first user that you create in the Linux, right, that has super user privilege, but all the other users that you create, that will be a normal user. So sudo will not work for every user. Test03. Okay, let's say I am creating test03. Now you see the permissions of test03. Test02 I created just using normal. I just used mkdir. That's why it got created with the user and group as CIB. But test03 I used sudo. That because of that, what happened? It created it as root user. The ownership is for root. So if you see the permission, user has full access, but here who is the user? Root has root, right? So if I go inside test03 and now if I try to create something like touch, I'm just creating a file touch abc.txt, right? As what will happen? Permission denied, right? Cannot touch. The permission got changed. So this is a common mistake that I see in new users. The reason is they create directories with sudo, or they execute commands with sudo and all within their directory, and the permissions will get messed up. Finally, over a period of time, you will see a lot of wrong permissions. Okay, and you will see, and it will become kind of a weird system. So be careful with the file system permissions. Okay, file permissions and the usage of sudo. Okay, so I think the video is now becoming long, so I'm trying to I'll make a pause here. So I think I'll just summarize what we have explained. We explained about the fundamentals of Linux, the architecture of Linux operating system, then the various distributions of Linux, then the various shells. Okay, so then the way to get into a machine, understand what that machine is, then some basic commands, okay, and the file system structure. One more thing I'll explain maybe before I stop is SSH. Okay, so let's say you want, I explained about like how to log into a machine. So in case you have direct GUI access, what will happen is this is a machine where you with the GUI. Okay, so you can enter the username password just use it directly using the GUI itself. You can get into the machine, and this is a VM, so that's why like it is taking some time to load and all. But in case of machines with GUI, you will enter the username password directly on the screen itself. Okay, and that in that way you can get in. But in case of machines without GUI, what will happen? You will not have that option at all. And for example, and again one more thing, in case of machines, if you want to in case of Windows, what we do, we use for logging into a remote machine, we use the remote desktop, right? Similarly, in Linux, we can log into a remote machine using SSH command instead of, so once you are already in a session, you can log into other machine without creating a new session. What you can do is 192, you just need to put the IP address. Okay, the format is you have to use the username at IP address, okay, or host name. So if you don't specify the username, what will happen is whatever is the login user in your current session, that will be considered as the default user in the other machine. So I'm just trying to log in here itself, 1.12. okay, so it will ask yes, and it will ask me the password. So if you do this way, you see now I logged in as coder inputs Ubuntu, right? Now I am going to SSH coder user 02 at 192.168.12, right? Now I have to enter the password for coder user. See, now I logged into the other machine as coder user 02, right? So in this way you can do SSH and the authentication mechanism can be password or key based or passwordless, so depending upon what you configure. Okay, so this is the usage of SSH. So I hope this video is useful. So if you have any comments, feedbacks, questions, feel free to comment below this video, and I'll be taking more videos on Linux. So we just started with it, so stay tuned, subscribe to this channel for getting more videos or frequent updates. Okay, thank you very much for watching this video. Have a nice day.